I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, thank you. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the committee may do so up to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, I know Commissioner Dull has something. Oh, Dan, you're okay.
I don't know if I'm a public official or whatever. I want to get in front of Jim because I know he can get long-winded.
Just a little.
Real quickly, Dan Patton, Charlton Park, obviously. This Thursday is our annual 4th of July celebration and Veterans Barbecue. And I hope hope you can take an opportunity to come out to that. It is a fundraiser for the local VFW, and then as well, we have games and stuff going on in the afternoon. I would enjoy seeing each of you doing the sack race or three-legged race. But with that being said, hopefully you can join us in celebration of the 4th and have a good time. The other thing, Ben's got, I just handed off to Ben the sign up for the pancake breakfast for the Gas and Steam Show, which comes up on the 13th of July. And hopefully we can get a little bit of time to come out and enjoy that activity with us. I also left you a flyer for that event.
You didn't leave us pancakes.
I did not leave. I didn't bring you pancakes this morning.
They will be available on the 13th.
Just saying,
yes.
you gotta give samples, man.
And then the other little flyer handed out is for July 20th and 21st, which is the Civil War muster coming up a little later in the month. So once again, it's summertime. We are busy. The car show was down, obviously. The weather, anybody around here who remembers Father's Day, it was a little bit wet, to say the least. Once again, we're looking forward to each of our events and hopefully you can come out and celebrate the 4th with us this Thursday and as well celebrate our veterans and help them with a little fundraiser. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Oh, Dan,
Yes,
is
sir.
it for the VFW or American Legion, or is that kind of the same?
It's American Legion. It's the Bauer
Post
post.
45?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comment this morning? Any other questions for Dan?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, sir. Drain Commissioner Dull, the floor is yours.
Jim Dell, Berry County Drain Commission. I wanted to give you guys a couple of updates. We, in conjunction with MDOT and DEQ, we are pumping water off M43 into Cloverdale Lake and then out of Cloverdale Lake into Long Lake. Our pumps are set at 800 gallon a minute off M43 and 900 a gallon a minute out of Cloverdale into Long Lake, so we don't add any extra problems to all the people on Cloverdale Lake. We are having a public meeting tonight for anybody that wants to come to it down at the Delton Kellogg Middle School Gymnasium. It's for Pine Lake. They have some flooding issues that we're looking at. Hopefully some Allegan County people will be there. Denise will be there from the Drain Commissioner over there. We'll be here. We'll be there. Our legal and our engineering staff will be there too. So be tickled to death if anybody wants to come down and see us. We're working with Dave Schinaver, we're going to be, on setting up a web page for our different projects to cover the frequently asked questions, because we're at a point that because of legalities, any questions that we're taking in, we have to answer them very specifically after that suit that we were filed against. So anything we do now is going through the lawyers and the engineers, so we're not going to be answering any more public comments or questions. They have the choice of doing a FOIA request. We will give them a cost estimate and they will pay for this information. Or Doug Kelly and Brian Sensi have both agreed that if some residents have questions and they're willing to pay Doug and Brian's hourly wage, they will drive down here and meet with them at their convenience. it's not fiscally responsible for us to be answering public questions on district monies, and that's exactly what we've been doing, and it's going to stop right here. So if anybody's got any other questions, either FOIA them or ask them to contact the commissioners and send them on. We don't have a problem answering the commissioners because they weed out 99% of them. One last question that Vivian had asked me on the Crooked Lake. Resident asked, why are we doing that as a drain project instead of as a special assessment lake project? It's twofold. Lake levels are set by the courts and we're directed by them. Drains are directed by petitions, and we received a drain petition. We did not get a lake level petition or any of that stuff. So just for the record, I know it's been bounced around. People have asked me about it. It's on Facebook that we should do it under the special assessment district. That's not the petition we got. So we have to follow statutory obligations of the office. So thank you. Any questions?
I don't have anything for you, Jim, thanks.
Okay, I'll leave you guys alone. I'll try not to be so
Did anybody
long-winded.
else have anything for Commissioner Dahl?
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Any other public comments? Here to present our next item is Kevin Shane, CEO of ACD.net.
Yeah, we've got some copies.
At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval. That's not the right one.
No, not yet.
I just have a presentation, so go ahead. This is different for me.
Hi, my name is Kevin Shane. I'm the CEO of ACD.net. I send out a little PowerPoint here. We're a broadband company. We build and operate fiber networks in 3 states, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. We're headquartered in Lansing, and we have 120 employees. What I'm here about today is I've met with the folks over at the Economic Development and the Chamber of Commerce a number of months ago about a grant application we're working on for Berry County to extend broadband. There was $20 million allocated by the state of Michigan to extend broadband in underserved areas of the state of Michigan. We have previous experience in government-funded broadband deployment. About 12 years ago, we got a couple of loans from the state of Michigan to extend broadband, principally in the southwest part of the state. Near St. Joe Benton Harbor. So we've done projects like these before. We also had a number of years ago in 2012 timeframe, we were a co-participant of a $40 million grant to build broadband infrastructure in a backbone pipe across numerous rural counties of Michigan. So the broadband grant programs on the 3rd page there's the website that describes what the state of Michigan is doing. So that $20 million is available for private sector operators such as ACD to apply for effectively a subsidy and a portion match. So for example, we would minimally have to match 10% of our own capital resources, but have the option to match a greater amount. And it's a competitive grant, and it's likely that this type of grant will be utilized, meaning there'll probably be more than 20 million applying. And so one of the cutoffs related to that is how much match there is. So we haven't determined what our match will be, but what we did a number of months ago is we met with the state officials, met with Senator Bison and Representative Calley and a number of people in the county, and kind of told them, gave them a quick rundown of what we were seeking to do. And shortly thereafter, we sent out 5,700 letters to residents within Berry County. Part of applying for the grant, and since we've been through these grant and loan applications through the government before, what is a principal concern is that they, if they're going to hand out money to extend infrastructure for private sector companies like ours, is to make sure that we're building in the correct areas. So we sent out 5,700 letters requesting survey information from your residents to ascertain what existing broadband they have. And so we've gotten somewhere around 600 responses. We also put up some, Facebook and Google ads targeted in those areas. And if you go to the next page here, this where it says underserved areas, these are areas that, based upon information that existing service providers, for example, AT&T and the local cable company, have provided to the federal government. These are the areas that the federal government recognizes that are, for sure, certainly underserved in the county.
And you gotta recognize those that aren't highlighted are poorly served.
That's correct. So what happens, the data collection process that the federal government uses is less granular and less specific and therefore less accurate than what we and many industry participants believe is the actual true case. So what we do to make sure that we've got very good data is we're sending letters directly to the consumers or potential subscribers in that area to actually have individual data. So as long as we get 5-10% respondents, we can then very accurately fill in those areas. And it may be that the providers that submitted data already exaggerated or over estimated what speeds the end users can get. So anyways, that's the map that the federal government recognizes. What we mailed to, which is a little bit, were these 5,700 addresses, and those are the pins of every address that we mailed to. That's kind of on the, I think, the 6th or 7th page. So we've gotten that data back, and we've got a fairly good sampling of the actual speeds. And the way the state program works is if people can get slower than 10 megabits, then those areas are eligible for grant funding. If they can get speeds faster than 10 megabits, the state government has determined that's an acceptable speed of broadband, and thus that those geographies are not eligible for subsidization. So, and thus, no further money will be applied to those areas that can get the better speeds. So the money is intended to go for slower speeds. So where we're at in the process is we've gotten that survey information back, and we've got a sufficient amount of data. And what we're going to do is determine a particular geography of these 5,700 locations, and do all the mathematics and engineering and cost analysis. And we'll take a section of this yellow pinned area, and we'll apply for a grant in that area. We're still working on, there's not enough money to do all 5,700 homes at this juncture, meaning the average home probably will cost around $3,000 to build broadband to those homes.
Madam Chair, can I ask
Yeah.
a clarifying question real
Sure.
quick?
Yep.
What exactly would you be installing?
So what we're planning on doing is building fiber optic, direct fiber optic.
In the ground?
So in the ground or on aerial infrastructure such as existing utility poles. So we have agreements with Consumers Energy and the other utility pole owners, and we would build fiber. Where there's utility poles, we'll put it in the air, and where there aren't utility poles, we'll put it in the ground.
So it would mimic what the cable lines look like currently?
That's correct. It'll be on the same pathways, or similar pathways, but rather than having older copper infrastructure, it'll be fiber optic infrastructure. And the speeds that we'll provide will be, as good as you can get in Seattle or, New York City or even it's going to be gigabit fiber, 1,000 megabits up and 1,000 megabits down.
So you're proposing, or you're looking to submit a proposal that installs towers and puts in fiber for as much money as you think you can get?
That's correct. Yep.
What is the primary strategy, towers or?
Our primary strategy is to put in fiber optics. Customers can be served by towers and by Wi-Fi or other wireless technologies. However, for residential, high-volume residential use, that generally is only a short-term, meaning another 5 years will go by, the technology will advance, we have to make substantial new investments. So what we're trying to do is, once fiber is built to these areas, the problem is forever solved.
Yeah.
Right? And so instead of, fixing the problem a little bit, we want to make sure it's permanently fixed forever.
Because you don't need to change the cable.
We don't need to change the cable. The fiber optics lasts, 50 years until we got to swap out the cable. And the speeds are unlimited. You're only limited, we're not limited by the equipment or the medium of transport. So wireless can do things that are, the big advantage with wireless is you can do a lot of mobility, but in terms of 4K TVs or watching Netflix or those types of things, it provides only a fraction of the capacity that an individual fiber does to each home.
I'm excited that you're not focusing on buried cable, because the right half of this map with the 5,600 pins or whatever is primarily agricultural properties. And so you run the risk when you bury that cable of getting caught in equipment, because we till our ground. And that has been one of the biggest concerns over the last few years with underground utilities, is getting caught by a plow or a deep shank chisel. And so having overhead wires is exciting, but also cautious at the same time, because somebody puts the box of their truck up and takes down a fiber optic cable. That's a lot more money than just a copper phone line.
Yeah.
So
you're, I'm sorry.
there's issues both ways, but I think the overhead wire is a whole lot less prohibitive for agriculture than it is the buried
So
cable.
you don't want to dig, you want to put it up on the utility lines.
It is preferential from a cost standpoint to put it up on the existing utility pole infrastructure, because it's less expensive to run it across those utility poles, as long as those utility poles are in good condition. So wherever there are utility poles, we'll almost always put it on utility poles. Where there's no utility poles, for example, there may be some neighborhoods or subdivisions or those types of things where the infrastructure is underground. If so, we typically will directionally bore those neighborhoods or those geographies. But it's very common in these areas that you're going to be at 80-90% utility pole infrastructure. Sometimes the drops that go up to people's houses, they may have put that underground. If so, we'll, put it underground as well there.
Any other questions?
What's the process timetable here?
So the process timetable, the grant was made available they notified the providers that the grant was made available back in, I think it was March, and then they published the specifications of what needed to be provided in full in late May. And so the grant will have to be submitted by August 30th.
So are you thinking that you get a certain amount of money, like say 2 million, and you do some, the next year apply again, keep going down the line? Is that what you're
So the 20 million that became available was was due to a bill that was passed under the last, under the Snyder administration, voted on by the legislature, obviously, and so they allocated $20 million. Generally for, we've often had conversations with governmental folks that, spinning up these grant programs and then spinning them down is problematic. And, we had, I was on the governor's infrastructure committee. AT&T was there, Comcast, Consumers, all the other utilities were there. And, basically the question was, what's it going to take to get rural areas wired up and to get, good technology to them. And at that time, the conversation was focused around, listen, it's expensive for the government to fire up a grant program and get all the compliance stuff in place. But, and so what we would prefer is a continuing thing. So, we could take a section of Berry County, knock it out, next year apply for another grant, knock that next section out and move on and on and on, and eventually, get in a production cycle. So there is a bill in the legislature now, sponsored by Huizenga, I believe is the representative. She's up in this area of the state.
Hoydinga
Huizenga, it might have been, yeah, Huizenga. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct.
from Wexford County.
Yep. And to reallocate the $20 million for the next year as well. I don't know where it's at presently. Haven't kept up on it in the last couple months. But I know that's sitting there. And then I spoke to a few of the people in the Senate, keep an eye on, and that was introduced in the House. So whether they'll allocate that $20 million for next year is unknown to me at this juncture. But
I had constituents that texted me and called me when they received your survey.
Oh, okay,
And they
yeah.
asked, does this mean something's happening? So your proposal seems innovative, but pragmatic.
Right.
Have you had success in achieving rural development grants like this before?
Yeah, so we've had, as mentioned, and I can expand on that a little bit more, we've had 3 previous grants. Or we had the first 2 were also state of Michigan. Those were in the 2005 and 2008 timeframe, and we obtained around $12 million, and we principally focused that investment in Southwest Michigan. And then in 2012, we obtained another grant with a couple other parties, private sector and one public sector party. That was $40 million. And so about $10 million of it was allocated to ACD. So we've executed 3 large grants, and we've had a number of other smaller ones as well.
I have 2 more questions, Madam
Sure.
Chair.
Yep.
First one is, if this grant is successful, what's the process of residents getting faster internet?
So what will happen is, in the geography we select, we will initiate marketing to those houses, and we'll say, we want to build broadband in this area. Here's the price and the cost for the services. And are you interested in obtaining service? Based upon that information, if we get a reasonable percentage of the population, we'll designate that as one of the launch areas. And then we will perform the engineering, permitting, and design. And the permitting we generally will submit to the County Road Commission and also the utility pole owner, which is generally consumers in these areas. And then we obtain the cost information back to get that engineering and that permitting done, make sure the financial analysis works, and then move forward with construction. Typically in neighborhoods, the construction takes, depending on the size of the geography, we'll take a little, we kind of phase these things out. So we'll say phase 1, we're going to go in there and it'll take us 2-3 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks to knock out an area. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as we put in all the backbone infrastructure, at that juncture, we notify the residents that indicated they wanted service and tell them, you know, okay, do you want it for sure? If so, we will install it and schedule it. And then we have other crews that go in there and do individual drops to do the final connection on the customer's private property. So the first phase is really to build the infrastructure which exists in the utility rights of way, which are generally adjacent to the roadways. And so,
thank you for that. Last question is, would it be helpful if this Board of Commissioners were to pass a resolution expressing how much this grant would mean to our community?
yes, it would be very helpful. It's preferential for, having been through a lot of these grant programs or seen a lot of them get executed, the principal concern, since we have to obtain permits from the constituent governmental entities, sometimes in like certain communities, I won't name names, but in certain communities, getting permits to build this infrastructure has been challenging at times, or excessive costs have been layered upon the provider putting the infrastructure in, right? So what getting permits to build infrastructure is a principal concern of the grant administrators. So having municipal cooperation is one of the key components that they determine. There's other areas in the state we're not, we could apply for, we're not going to, because we've had too many challenges getting permits in a timely manner. So we previously, I didn't include the maps here, we previously built fiber infrastructure throughout the city of Hastings and some of the surrounding areas to about 3-4 years ago. Built that infrastructure, and we had good success with working with your road commission. So a resolution indicating that you're in support of this is important and useful to us.
We can give that to townships too.
Yep.
So
There's
the
a letter.
internet in this county sucks.
What's that? Yeah.
And it sucked for a long time.
Yep.
And there are few issues that pester my constituents and everyone else's, like slow broadband. So I'd like to thank Commissioner Parker for making the connection, pun intended, to bring you here today. So thank you.
Yep. There's an example letter that I had Bison and Callie write. This is a letter of support that we're going to submit for this grant as well. So it's a copy of that's in the back of the.
Commissioner Jackson has a question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you had mentioned at the beginning that your average cost was $3,000 per home.
That's what we would estimate the infrastructure installation cost will be. So, for example, we want to serve 1,000 homes, it may cost us $3 million. That's a rough estimate. Could be 4,000, could be 5,000, could be 1,500. And it kind of depends on, what areas we select.
Are those costs passed on to the consumer, or are those part of your 50% match from the government, from the grant?
Yeah, so the what percentage the match may be, we haven't determined yet. Ultimately, but those funds are what the state of Michigan grant would cover. So, for example, let's say it costs 1,000 homes, and it costs us $3,000 per home on average. And ACD determines, okay, we can gamble 20% of our own money. Then we have to show we've got $600,000 allocated for that, and then the government makes up the other 2.4 million, and so that would be the for example one economic model of that. What the end user or the subscriber or the resident, what drives that mathematics, though, is do we get 10% of the population, or do we get 70% of the population, or 50% of the population? So us doing a survey to the end users helps us determine, based upon, the comments that we got, the 600 people, that roughly 600, I think it might be a little more than now, we're getting more in every day, but, roughly, basically they're like, broadband's horrible, it's affecting my life and my kids, and, they gotta go to the library to do homework, or, go to the neighbors.
They're
or
not doing
whatever.
homework.
Yeah, they're not doing it, not over the summer at least. So that's how the math will work. Now, we may have installation charges to the house, which could be anywhere from $150 to, $300 or $500. But mostly, we want to make that number as low as possible, because we know that's an economic impediment to getting broadband to some people's houses.
So they're running around $50 a month, or what's the?
Yeah, typically for gigabit, our price is $59.95.
$59.95 per
Yep,
month.
correct. There's no, unlike Comcast and all these other providers, we don't create odd or weird fees that we invented in our head to layer on to the price. It's just $59.95, and that's it.
And then when you look at the map and you see where you sent those cards out, Berry County has so many rural residents.
Yep.
And especially in southern Berry County, well, all over Berry County, there is issues with kids being able to not connect, not do homework. Typically, the model when we've talked to people about broadband is that they're gonna go into areas that are more densely populated, so the return on the investment is greater. Do these government grants help fill that gap where you're gonna fill in the areas that are unserved? Or are you looking at areas that have higher density population that are underserved with that 10 megabit speed?
So the grant funding under the state program defines the to a certain, it provides levers to the geography, and it's based upon what speeds are presently available, based upon what is the federal standard associated with broadband. So, for example, if I wanted to go into the city of Hastings right now, there's adequate speeds. They're not gigabit fiber, but they're sufficiently adequate in that we wouldn't be able to obtain state grant funding at this time. Now, the federal government over time has revised what's the minimum standard of broadband, and they've kind of been inching that up. Because, more and more things are getting on the internet, like YouTube and video and virtual reality, and all these technologies are coming along. So it may be that in the future there may be grant funding for some of the towns or some of the city of Hastings or some other areas like that. But right now, if we tried to apply for that, it wouldn't really work out. At least, now, generally what happens is, in those areas, if we get a good chunk of the county, usually we'll start, spending our own capital to service those higher density geographies ourselves.
Yeah, the concern is that there are the underserved areas, I'm sure Nashville, Delton, areas like that maybe have some broadband, though it be not great. At least there's some. Are we creating a competitor in those markets with better speeds, or are we actually getting into areas where there's no service and taking care of some of those constituents that have either zero or just no access to it?
Yeah, so all the granularity associated with how the government provides those grants is if it's this speed or lower, then you can apply. So what we're doing is, ultimately what we're going to be doing is picking the area where we think, having done a series of these grants, kind of like the ones we've done in the past, our goal is to make sure the area that we choose to apply for, we can quickly and efficiently execute. Because what's happening at the state as well as the federal level, and this is happening in other states as well. There's multiple other states. For example, Indiana has a $100 million grant program, and a variety of other states are doing this. Is effectively what's happening is that type of investment from the public entities is increasing. So what I think is what we think is going to happen is over time, all of these programs, all the successful ones I've been involved with, make the private sector entity gamble a portion of their money, right? So what they avoiding doing really within the last 10, 15 years is, there's no 100% grants. It's always we got to gamble up our own capital. So our goal is to make sure that we build out an area, we get a sufficient number of subscribers, and we make an economic return so that if and when another set of grant dollars becomes available, we can apply for those areas. Because a lot of the analysis is done, that's done in this is a financial analysis. They don't want to give a bunch of grant money away and then have the company fail, right? Or the company goes out of business, or the investment wasn't economically sustainable. That's the big challenge why infrastructure is not gotten built in these areas, is because it's just more economically efficient to build in a higher density population area than it is in a low density population area. So,
Thank you.
yep, sounds good, thank you.
Just a quick comment. I think there's an opportunity in the future, once we see that something's being done, and it's being done, whether it's this company or another company, it's being done the right way, and it's growing and it's effective. I think there's an opportunity to get industry and businesses involved with helping to pay for some of this too, because it's just a better place to live for their employees, for the employees' kids to do their homework. There's a whole lot of good reasons that you can sell this thing to that area too. And I have to mention too that the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development and all that has been active in behind the scenes on this too, and trying to get something going here also. So I have no more comments.
Anybody else have questions for him? Thank you very much, Mr. Shane. I really appreciate this. I was one of your respondents from one of the
great.
yellow pins. So I get nominated to do all that kind of paperwork.
How good.
From my home, at
For
least.
your own, okay.
So I'm excited for the opportunities that it's going to bring some of the agricultural sector of our county.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Feel free to give me a call. My cell number's on the cover there. We'll
Thank
talk to
you,
you
sir.
soon.
Is there a motion on the floor?
There is not.
Okay. I thought there was.
Well, I tried to be, but it was a motion for the next agenda item. So there was not a motion on the floor.
Okay.
We discussed having a resolution, but we don't have anything written.
Will you let us know when you're at the point that you're gonna need some of that, the resolutions and stuff? Or-
Yeah, I think something before, really August 20th roughly would be the cutoff timeline.
That you would need it by?
Yep, correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
And then I think from that point, it's time to hit the townships too, and the villages, and suggest to them too the same thing.
And if there was another company that applied, I think from Berry County, we would probably let them use the same resolution, right?
Yeah,
There may be other companies, and we'd have to be fair and let them present too, so.
there may be a company who has existing infrastructure, like on the west side of the county, that wants to expand with grant money, and, so there's a lot of area in our county that's underserved. So, Verizon gets way too much of my money for data, so. Is there any more discussion on this? All righty, let's move on to our next item. Here to present our next item is Tammy Price. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the purchase of new furniture for the Adult Specialty Court Office in the amount of $15,566.60, $14,901.60 to Interphase Interiors, and $665 to Office Depot, and approval of the purchase of office dividers for the Family Division Clerical Office in the amount of $2,199.86 for a total of $17,766.46 with funds to be paid from the Capital Replacement Fund.
So move.
Support.
Moved by Parker, support by Gibson. Tammy, the floor is yours. I got your haircut.
So we've been approved for $33,000. When I started this search, they weren't giving us the My Deal pricing, and so our request is significantly lower because we were able to
Is your microphone on? Yeah, it is, okay.
finally obtain the My Deal pricing, so it's significantly lower than what we had originally suspected it would be. We also got a different salesperson who was much more willing to work with us and give us a really good deal. Much of our office furniture is from when substance abuse was in the building, and so we have a lot of old furniture. This would allow us to have matching office furniture. It would look professional. It would give us some additional storage capabilities so that we aren't stacking things on our desks. Oddly, even though everything's going digital, we seem to be collecting more paperwork, and so our filing room is getting fuller and fuller, so this would be very helpful. Additionally, we're rearranging the reception area to allow one of the administrative assistants to move back away from the window so that participants can't see what's on her desk and read what's on her desk. And it would allow the other administrative assistant to turn and face the window so that she can see when somebody comes into our office.
Any questions for Tammy?
What was the origin of this request?
What
I
was,
mean, what happened that you thought, oh, we need to make a change? Is it because the furniture is broken, or we need to change our office?
yes, like I said, the furniture is old, the paint is chipping off, there's some cloth that's on some of the furniture that's kind of wearing. My desk has chips in it, dents in it, the drawer doesn't pull all the way out, so there are some structural issues as well.
But functionally, it's still operational.
We're using it today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Tammy?
What did we, oh, John has a question.
No, no,
You just raised your hand at me.
I just thought you were done.
What did we do for the specialty courts before, or what did we do for the courts in terms of furniture like a couple of years ago? Michael?
We have replaced some furniture. We have not replaced a lot of furniture. And that was part of putting in place the capital replacement fund so that we could get into some of those items. We have been very good about taking care of buildings, exterior issues, roofs, interior portion of the buildings as it comes to carpeting and those things. We just had not gotten to furnishings of any type, and capital replacement was established to cover, as I looked to Matt Houchley, some equipment at the Sheriff's Department, vests, weapons, and mobile radios come to mind that didn't fall into any specific category we'd established. We've got those covered, and now we're able to start looking at furniture and replacing some furniture throughout that is old, dated. You know, we've got kind of two areas of furnishings. One are areas that have the traditional steel case desks, which function but are just not suited for some of the office environment anymore, functionality. But they were built to last
Okay.
6 lifetimes, if you may.
So like the typewriter still works, we just don't use it anymore.
Yeah. And then we have some furnishing, probably like this office has, that wasn't the highest quality equipment, so it's not gonna last as long. And
Okay.
to Tammy's point, drawers start to not work.
Yeah, I get it.
The cloth panels and that are just wearing. As we remove carpeting, we sometimes have to take them apart, and when you put them back together, it doesn't often serve well for some of the equipment, particularly if it's office furniture that was purchased on a real budget, if you may.
Yeah.
We have much like built construction in the 70s, as I hear people talk about, it was just an era that wasn't the best construction time. So I don't know if that helps. I can't,
Yeah,
I don't have any specifics on it,
yeah,
and I could look into that, but.
Yeah, I don't want to look into this too much. This sounds like a good proposal, and it makes sense to me, you know. We got to make sure we have all these spaces for our constituents. But the only other question I have is, are we going to have to do this for front of the court when it moves in?
Right now, we're looking at repurposing what we have at front of the court into that facility. We don't know the final answer until, of course, that space is finished and we have a plan. But that'll be part of the look, if you may, is when we, Bob Van Putten and Landmark put together the final plan. We've asked them to look at the existing furnishings and repurpose what can be repurposed.
Great.
Commissioner Parker?
Yeah, Michael,
Yeah.
should we start to coordinate that furniture over there will match friend of the court's furniture and this type of thing? I mean, are we trying to put the same kind of furniture throughout the courthouse, or?
Not necessarily. This is a different office.
Right.
So to the degree that we have offices, we will try to coordinate so it doesn't look like it's an eclectic mix of things. That being said, we have a lot of that exists. I mean, it's not uncommon right now to have, and I think it serves pretty well. For example, my office, I know my furnishings.
No one has a chair
My
like
office has
you.
been there since we
Tired.
started, so it's over 25 years. The conference table and chairs that I have in my conference room were from Commissioner McKelvey when he was on the board, if you remember. So that's even before that. And then the furnishings in the front are from a newer era. They've been replaced, but they're probably 15 or so years old. So they don't exactly mix.
So
but
that's
we-
not a concern that you think we're gonna have on that, okay?
It's lower on the, it'd be nice,
Yeah.
but it's not, we've got bigger concerns than to make sure everything matches throughout. We do our best so it doesn't look like a real eclectic mix, but that's not the high priority.
Not as long as every department doesn't come to us in the next, how many sessions and say, oh yeah, we need it too. I mean, if we can phase in things over a couple of years before we do that.
Function is our real priority, to make sure that it functions, it works, particularly with ergonomics now becoming more and more important.
Yep. Yeah, for instance, that the light fixture underneath would you can put a LED bulb in or something along that line. I understand that. What happens to the old furniture? Have you got any kind of ideas where that's going? Or did they offer it as a trade-in or anything like that?
No, they didn't offer it as a trade-in, and we kind of have an eclectic collection of different types of furniture and colors and eras. But my guess is that Dave would auction it off, that it would go to the county for the auction.
I got a good deal on my home office. I have one of the spare tables.
I have no more questions.
Anyone else have questions for Tammy? Thank you, ma'am. There being no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the purchase of new furniture for the Adult Specialty Court office in the amount of $15,566.60, $14,901.60 to Interphase Interiors, and $665 to Office Depot, and approval of the purchase of office dividers for the Family Division Clerical Office in the amount of $2,199.86, for a total of $17,766.46, with funds to be paid from the Capital Replacement Fund. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay. The item is approved. Jan.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
let me read I gotta find it. At this time, the chair would recommend a motion, the chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to purchase a new 2019 GMC Terrain through the State of Michigan My Deal Purchasing Program to replace a 2019 GMC Terrain, VIN number 3GKALMEV4KL287795, damaged in an auto accident on June 20th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Geiger, second by Smelker. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you. For those of you who may or may not be aware, on June 20th, 4 of our juvenile probation officers were on their way to a training and were involved in an auto accident. They had an individual pull out in front of them at the Walmart intersection. So did total the vehicle. I am happy they were, unfortunately it was our newest vehicle, but I'm happy they were in that vehicle. Bumps and bruises sustained by all, could have been a whole heck of a lot worse. So we are requesting a replacement of the 2019 GMC. I asked Michael if Michael has the numbers. I understand this has all been presented to you, and it's my understanding that with insurance and everything, there should be sufficient funds to cover the new vehicle.
Any questions for Tammy?
Glad everybody's okay.
Yeah.
That wasn't the only accident that happened that day. That accident caused a chain reaction, and there was another accident at the light within just a few minutes of that one. So, any questions for Michael or Tammy? Or Jan?
Yeah.
Sorry,
That's
I'll
okay.
get it right. All right, there being no further discussion, the question before the committee is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to purchase a new 2019 GMC Terrain through the State of Michigan My Deal Purchasing Program to replace a 2019 GMC Terrain, VIN number 3GKALMEV4KL287795, damaged in an auto accident on June 20th. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? The item is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
5 minutes.
How do we feel about a break? 5 minutes, come back, be back by 10.